Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our global audience. We are so excited to welcome you to today's event, From Curiosity to Impact, a webinar series for AI builders. My name is Jackie Watts, and I'm the Learning and Insights Lead at the Patrick J. McGovern Foundation, a 21st century philanthropy dedicated to advancing AI and data science solutions to shape a more sustainable, equitable, and thriving future for all. This event is the first of a 4-part series where we'll be diving into each of the phases of what we refer to as the AI journey. Essentially, the progression that organizations take as they're navigating if or how to integrate AI into their organization's work to achieve greater impact. This journey starts with the curiosity phase, where organizations are first building familiarity and comfort with what AI is and how it might fit into the organization's work in building buy-in across the team. It's followed by the exploration phase, where organizations start to take a bit more tangible way forward in applying AI, defining the right scope of problem, identifying if AI is the right fit, preparing data, and more. The third phase, adoption, is geared around actually starting to build a solution. So selecting, training, refining an AI model, and driving product development. And finally, we have the impact phase, where organizations start to take a closer look at the outcomes associated with a solution, perhaps considering how to evolve that solution or scale for greater impact, and contributing knowledge back to the wider sector. So this transformation to being an AI-enabled organization, of course, doesn't happen overnight. We know that there's so many open questions to navigate as organizations are going through that journey. And so that's one of the reasons we put together PJMF's Learning Hub as a way to share resources around these different phases of the journey. The Learning Hub brings together insights from many places. You'll find curated set of external resources that our team has compiled, in addition to PJMF-produced learning content, such as videos and asynchronous course activities for you to do alongside your colleagues. Technical know-how from our products and services team, our team of in-house technologists, and learnings from so many of our amazing grant partners who have been doing fantastic work in this space in the form of case studies pertaining to how they've navigated specific steps of the AI journey. So as mentioned, today's webinar segment is going to be focused on that first phase of the journey, the curiosity phase, including how to build a foundational understanding of AI, what AI is, how to overcome internal buy-in, gain awareness of AI social responsibility considerations, and shape a vision for how AI can advance your organization's impact. So the format of today's session will be starting out with 3 short presentations from our guest speakers, followed by a panel session moderated by PJMF Storytelling and Advocacy Lead, Yolanda Boccioludovico. And after the panel, we will have a short Q&A. So you'll have a chance to ask some questions of our speakers. And finally, after the webinar, you're welcome to join us on Zoom for some casual breakout room discussions. So I have a colleague who will be posting a breakout room link in the chat now, and then again at the end of the session. So we hope you'll be able to join us there. Lastly, we do plan to share the recording for this webinar afterwards on the Learning Hub Curiosity page. So please do feel free to send it along to any folks in your network who maybe couldn't join us today who might be interested in catching up afterwards. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Yolanda to introduce our 3 guest speakers.
Thank you, Jackie. Hi, everyone. As Jackie mentioned, my name is Yolanda, and I'm the Storytelling and Advocacy Lead here at the Patrick J. McGovern Foundation. I'm thrilled to introduce to you today 3 experts who are leading organizations at the frontier of AI for social impact. And we'll begin with 3 short presentations by each of them, and then we'll move on to the panel discussion, as Jackie mentioned. So first, we have Evan Tchaikovsky. Evan is the global director of the World Resource Institute's Data Lab, where he leads a team building tools and services that help WRI's programs and country offices use data and AI for greater impact. In his role, he has guided the lab's growth, restructured its operations, and developed new products and technical services that are scaling WRI's work on climate, nature, and people. Next, we have Felicitas Carrique. Felicitas, or Feli, is the executive director of the News Product Alliance, a global nonprofit that is now the world's largest network of news product thinkers. She leads initiatives that equip news organizations to navigate transformation at the intersection of audience, technology, and business strategy. Her work centers on translating innovation into practice by guiding media leaders to build products that are resilient, ethical, and grounded in audience needs. Finally, we have Abhilash Mishra. Abhilash is the founder and chief science officer at Equitech Futures, a global fellowship and innovation lab working on tech for societal challenges. His work as a researcher and entrepreneur is situated at the intersection of technological innovation and social inequality. He is also the founding director of the SHU Initiative on Science, Technology, and Public Policy at the University of Chicago. Welcome to everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'll pass it off to Evan for the first presentation on his work at WRI's Data Lab. Off to you, Evan.
Thank you so much, Yolanda, and thank you to the whole community and crew at Patrick J. McGovern Foundation. We're grateful for your leadership on this and grateful for hosting us today. My name is Evan, and I lead the Data Lab at World Resources Institute. We can go to the next slide. So our mission at WRI is to build a future where people and planet can both thrive together. And we do that by producing research. We do that by producing different types of products. And we do that through engaging stakeholders around the world. Those stakeholders could be government officials who are struggling with planning. They could be companies who want to be more responsible in their supply chains, but are struggling with how. Or they could be communities that are trying to affect change, trying to make their world, their backyard, their neighborhood better, but don't necessarily have the tools to do so. The Data Lab's part of that is working with great topical experts, so people who know about the world's forests, people who know about the world's water systems, and experts in certain geographies, so people who know about places around the world that we care deeply about, from rainforests to urban environments, to help those folks, those experts who are really committed to doing good in the world, actually use technology to do that good. We work in 2 big ways and apply AI in both. First is to accelerate this research. We can produce new and exciting new information using AI. And then to make sure that we don't stay at just that research phase, that research actually gets used to change something in the world. And I'll share a little bit about this. An example we just launched yesterday, if you'd like to check it out, it's called Global Nature Watch. It's a platform that harnesses research that is produced with AI. So we use AI to understand geospatial imagery and to measure things like where the world's grasslands are changing, where there's deforestation, and so many more topics. And so we've created new assets using AI. And then we brought that together into a platform that allows you to chat with the system and actually build charts and graphs and maps and almost whole dashboards without ever needing to code or to kind of pick up that work. And that brings together those 2 parts of how we use AI for the production of new information, better, faster, more granular, and then turning that into actionable formats and useful ways for people on the ground. So I'm going to go to the next slide here. Across our portfolio, we have dozens of teams and dozens of projects that leverage AI in some way. And so we constantly face this challenge of bringing new teams in, bringing them into the curiosity phase, working with them to figure out what actually they want to use AI for. How would they use it? Do they have the right budget? Do they have the right funding? Do they have the right focus? Are we understanding the risks, etc.? And we've come to visualize this almost as a journey on a narrow path. You can see here down at the end there, something, using AI for impact. But on either side, there's a real challenge with, you can kind of steer off. You can go into something that we call the valley of hype. And of course, if you're part of the discourse on, say, a platform like X or many other places, You know, there's a lot of hype about AI. There's a lot of people who are saying incredible things, sometimes fantastical things, sometimes things that are actually genuinely harmful, and they're actually celebrating and cheering that. And that's a possibility. We have teams who are really excited at Deborah about using technology to do good. And sometimes that can lead towards kind of veering off towards this valley of hype and getting lost. And what that means is you'll never make it out of the curiosity phase because you'll be stuck with aspirations that are too big, not tractable. You don't even know what the next step is because you know we have to use AI, but you have no idea how we might start using AI tomorrow or how we might get on a path to doing AI. On the other side, we have this valley of doom. And there are other team members and teams at Deborah who've kind of started to veer in this direction. We work with them to kind of bring them back on the path. But that is, becoming captured by the potential risks and potential harm of a new technology. With all new technologies and all new tools, there are clear and challenging risks. Deborah is an organization that does some of the world's leading work on climate and nature. We know these risks well, and we work on quantifying them and understanding them ourselves. But we also don't want to get sucked into that and let that trap us and say, we won't actually investigate new technology. We won't be curious about it. And so to keep on that road, to kind of move forward through this period of curiosity, to not either get pulled off towards, buying into the hype too much or get sucked into the valley of doom, we have a couple principles that I'll share with you today and leave you with. If we can go to the next slide. The first is find firm ground to stand on. Set your principles and believe in those principles and make those tech agnostic. And I think this really helps if you're someone who's really excited in an organization about using technology, and your organization may be pulling a little bit back, is to get back to those principles. Why are we here? What do we do? And how can we help others? And make sure they understand that and you go forward. Second, find the energy. And this is about creating a vision that actually doesn't use the word AI, but a vision for change in the world that you want to drive towards. And that energy, more so than, hey, let's just use AI or hey, let's not use AI, that vision of a better future gives us the energy to move forward. Third, you need a wheel to steer. The next phase in Patrick J. McGovern's thing is really about that prototype experimenting. But even at this stage, you need to be curious and think in small loops. Get that feedback so then you can steer and kind of stay on that road. Fourth, something good on the radio. This metaphorical radio, of course, but it's really important in the curiosity phase to curate who you're listening to focus on practical, thoughtful voices. Of course, if you're here today with Patrick J. McGovern, the community that's been curated, you're in a great spot. But we think about our LinkedIn feeds, we think about our Twitter feeds, our Blue Sky feeds, really focus on those voices that are practical and are delivering impact. And then finally, this is as we exit a curiosity phase, never leave curiosity behind. If there's one skill that helps me throughout my entire journey with AI, this comes from building large products all the way down just the daily experiments and ways that I use AI, is don't leave curiosity behind. Instead of being fearful or too excited about something, too hyped about something, really be curious, ask good questions, and move forward. So thank you so much to the community here today, and I'll hand it back over to Yolanda.
Wonderful. Thank you, Evan, for that excellent presentation. I love that you start with having firm ground to stand on. I think that's really critical as we enter this time of sort of rapid change, to have those principles back of mind. I'll pass it over to Feli for the next presentation on her work at the News Product Alliance.
Thank you, Yolanda, and thank you everyone at PGMF. As they were saying, I'm Feli, and I'm very excited to get curious about AI with you all. So I am going to start by sharing the work that we do in the journalism world. We believe that journalism exists to give people the information they need to build healthy communities and democracies, so that they can make decisions, participate in civic life, and feel connected to each other. But the industry has not kept pace with how audiences consume information. Think of yourselves. When was the last time you actually typed the address of a news site so that you can find something specific? Audiences are now fragmented, trust is fragile, and technology, including AI, keeps reshaping this landscape. And that's where we, the NPA, come in. Our mission is to help all of these organizations build resilient, audience-centered, tech-savvy journalism products so that they can keep serving communities. And when I say news, you might be thinking of big outlets like CNN or the New York Times, but just as vital are the small players. The local paper in a town of 10,000, an independent newsletter holding city council accountable, or a 5-person startup covering niche issues. And for many communities flooded with this information, these are the only source they can trust. Next slide, please. The next one. So those were the organizations we had in mind as we thought of AI and its transformational power. And as product thinkers, and I think this is aligned with what Evan was saying, we didn't start with thinking of a solution. We started with hosting conversations and identifying what was the right problem to solve. We built, next slide, please. We built the NPAI Collab, and this is an interdisciplinary group made of product, tech, and audience development experts, leaders from small, local, and nonprofit news organizations, and university partners, so that they could help us identify the problems and co-design solutions that would prove value if we leveraged AI. And next slide, please. Here is what we actually found out. News organizations we were working with were not blocked by fear, or it was not that they were not curious. They were blocked by data. Most newsrooms already collected valuable first-party data, emails, surveys, SMS conversations, even comments from the articles they put out. But this data was fragmented, inconsistent, and siloed. They couldn't link donor engagement to story pitches or even integrate their fundraising data with audience insights. And the problem is that AI is only as good as the data you feed it. So without reliable, structured inputs, AI cannot deliver its transformational value. It just becomes an add-on. Next slide, please. And I think this is the unsexy part. This is the path we took, thinking about infrastructure. We started to feel very curious about the problem and try to find the root causes. And through the NPAI Collab, we are developing an open first-party data schema, which is a shared standard for how newsrooms structure audience data, whatever it might come from, that will allow them to create trustworthy audience signals that AI can build on. For example, like sending trustworthy school updates only to parents in a specific zip code. And next slide. This is very aligned with us as a community. We're building this in the open. The tool will be free to adopt, shaped by community governance, so it's not locked inside proprietary platforms. And we expect this also lower costs across the field and create interoperability amongst all of these organizations. And last, and this is my last slide, solving the technical side is not enough. And when we continue to explore this curiosity, we realize that to make AI truly useful, organizations also need a culture, systems, and leadership. They need a shared understanding of why we cared about this data and why it mattered. Help them integrate this and also have the leadership that is able to turn AI-driven insights into editorial, audience, and revenue strategies. So thanks to the support of PGMF, we are building not just a tool, but a foundation for future-proofing journalism and its ability to harness AI in ways that strengthen democracy.
Thank you so much, Feli. I loved that focus on trust and how important that is to sort of embed it into your audience strategy or your AI strategy from the very beginning. So thank you for bringing that up. And I'm just excited to discuss a little bit further during the panel session. I'll pass it over to Abhilash now for the final presentation on his work at Equitech Futures.
Thank you, Yolanda, and thank you so much to the PJMF team for hosting this webinar and for their support for building an AI for impact ecosystem globally. My name is Abhilash Mishra, and I am the founder and chief science officer of Equitech Futures. We are an innovation lab and a technology fellowship focused on supporting very early career innovators who are building tech for social impact. And the way in which we do this, if we can go to the next slide, is through three things: talent discovery, AI-enabled R&D, and then supporting a product foundry. We host Equitech Institutes, which are both virtual and in-person institutes that bring emerging innovators from around the world together for approximately 8 to 10 weeks, where they work with each other to build prototypes to solve specific challenges. These institutes tend to be very interdisciplinary, trying to get innovators who come both from a technical background as well as from other disciplines like law, medicine, the biological sciences, and the nonprofit sector. We also run innovation challenges where we have a specific theme where we get early stage innovators to build AI tools to address that particular theme. Through these institutes and innovation challenges, we then select a group of innovators that we support in helping prototype and test out new tools. And through the venture studio, really try and figure out whether there is an opportunity for some of these tools to be valuable to the larger community. In particular, we are very interested in ensuring that AI is being used in problems where it is truly relevant. And we kind of encourage innovators to pivot away from using AI when it is not the right tool. And then finally, we have a product foundry where we have a family of products that we support, and they span all the way from tools to support climate scientists to measure carbon emissions and track carbon emissions, all the way to a WhatsApp-based hiring tool in South Africa, which is Kala, and our most recent product, which is Lipi, which stands for Literature in India and the Indian subcontinent post-independence, which is building a data set of a language data set that will be supporting large language models in South Asia. So what are some of the kind of principles we've learned in the process? If we can go to the next slide. Curiosity and experimentation is kind of part of our DNA as a R&D organization that is working on with very early stage innovators. And the lesson that I always try to emphasize is that this is truly a golden age for experimentation. And so we should be approaching building AI for impact through the lens of experimentation. And the good thing about AI tools today is that the cost of experimentation has truly fallen precipitously. Now, what that allows us to do is to really give agency to a lot of our innovators and employees in the company to experiment with the tools available, whether these are tools like ChatGPT or Claude, or tools to build prototypes like Cursor or Lovable, and that allowing people to experiment truly ends up surfacing a lot of interesting product ideas that would just not be possible with sitting around and doing kind of product ideation. And doing this kind of iterative prototype building also allows us to get a lot more tangible feedback from end users, which was not possible earlier. So earlier, if you had to build a product, you would typically build a technology team that would cost that would have a high cost and would have a longer time frame for deployment, and the kind of time cycle or the time period of getting feedback was just very long. Now with AI, that time cycle or the feedback loop has become much shorter, and that is something that I think is a really interesting space to work on, as Evan mentioned. Getting rapid feedback from users using these prototypes ends up being probably the most critical kind of point in this curiosity cycle, because we can build small prototypes, showcase that to potential users, get a feedback of whether it is working or not, and then iterate. A cycle that used to take months now typically takes days or even weeks. And then kind of finally thinking about deploying additional capital. As nonprofit leaders, you're always working in an environment where capital is scarce. And so you want to figure out how to deploy capital at the right stage. And so deploying additional capital in the prototype to product phase, where you have had a lot of feedback on what is working and what is not working with the prototype, I think that's when it ends up becoming the stage to deploy additional capital. And sort of going from that ideation to prototype to product phase requires a certain kind of iterative mindset that I think can be uncomfortable and is new for institutions that might not be as used to rapid prototyping and rapid experimentation. And so I think that ends up being a critical bottleneck in culture. Like building culture, which is for experimentation, is amazing. And I'll finally leave you with, if we go to the last slide, our product, and you can go check it out on leapylibrary.com. And this is a product that I prototyped in an evening on Claude, and we were able to then take this product and take the prototype and build the product in about 2 weeks' time. And I think this is another example of how we can go from prototyping to product in an iterative manner and on much smaller time scales for way less capital. And that, I think, is a very, very interesting time for AI for impact organizations. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you, Abhilash. Those were all wonderful presentations. And I think there were a lot of sort of common threads that I noticed. We could take additional time to talk about those, but in the interest of time, I definitely want to switch over to the panel discussion. So I see everyone is now back on stage and we'll get started. My first question is actually a question to everyone, so we'll take it in parts. The inner workings of AI can be difficult to comprehend, and learning how to use it might be overwhelming. What are some of the ways you've demystified AI on your own teams, and how did your teams respond? What steps did you take to alleviate any of those early concerns or skepticism? Let's start with Abhilash.
Thank you, Yolanda. So as an educational institution, learning is very much kind of part of our DNA. And so we encourage our team members to attend a lot of the applied AI classes that I teach in some of the institutes. So really making the staff feel a part of that learning journey has been critical, because then they get to engage with these technologies as learners as opposed to just deployers. And so I think sort of fostering a learning mindset has been critical in the company.
That's great. Thank you. Evan, how about you?
For us, we have a pretty awesome and nerdy organization. So people really love to see things produced, and they'd like to see the work behind it. And so for us, it's been a process of both giving guidance, and we have guidance for how staff can use generative AI in their work, and then showing the work, showing the research, explaining to folks, for example, why we say generating images with AI at DeBry is a red use case, because we know that that is a more carbon intensive activity than just generating text. And for other organizations, that may not be a huge thing, right? And we understand that even very reasonable and impact-oriented organizations can disagree. But by both bringing people in and saying, here's the rule, and then here's the science behind the rule, or here's the rule and here's the experience behind it, as we build more products and we have a dedicated team focused on AI, kind of sharing their experience out into the organization just helps get that buy-in. And I think that combination of clear guidelines and then showing the work and showing how we are processing with this changing environment really gets people excited and bought in, and then it builds trust over time.
I love that. Feli, how about you?
I think I'm going to echo some of what Abhilash and Evan were just saying. But because since the get-go, we knew supporting this work meant learning together and not pretending that us as an organization had all the answers. So looking back, I would say that the things that worked best were that first, we partnered with folks who knew more than us. We had trusted academics from innovation labs all over the US, or tech leads from news organizations who've been doing the hard technical work for a long time and were already part of our community and could help us understand and demystify things with the folks that we were working. The second thing would be that we grounded our work in very concrete use cases. So instead of just talking about AI as this huge thing, we focus on like the real problems, the real challenges, like analyzing 1,000 text messages from community members or connecting donor engagement data. And that made like the conversations more about the problem and trying to understand what the mechanisms around AI could help and why they would help with that problem. And lastly, and probably the most powerful thing that we've seen, and I think this is just what Evan was mentioning, and it's curiosity grows in community, right? Like we were able to create a collab and a space where organizations could see others facing the same blockers. We could see others facing the same blockers than us. So they were more willing like to share, to experiment and learn together, and understand that they were like on a shared journey and part of a curve, of a learning curve, instead of just like behind.
Those are all great insights. Thank you to the three of you. Feli, that actually sets me up really nicely for the next question, that curiosity grows in community. That's a wonderful quote. But basically, you've spoken in the past about building peer communities and an advisory group to not only help identify the problem at hand, but also sustain that spirit of collaboration along the AI journey. So I'm curious, how do you go about selecting the right stakeholders for those sort of peer community and advisory groups? And what are some of the criteria you use to inform that selection process?
This is a great question, which I can answer, but might be a bit different for us because it is a bit backwards. We did not actually sit down and had a blank sheet and said like, who should we invite? Like the right people were already in our community and in our orbit. So last year, we organized this event with product experts, local news leaders, and they approached us with the idea of working together to make sure AI wasn't just like about efficiency gains, but actually serving this deeper purpose for journalism. And I think this was the case because we spent a lot of time building these relationships and had a network of collaborators who trusted one another and valued that collaboration. So when we brought them into the same room, the conversations just flew naturally, and folks were like very willing to continue to work together, and they respected what others brought to the table and saw the problems from others' perspective. So if I would need to put it in like bullet points of what made the mix work for our stakeholders, I will start by reiterating the point of trust and openness. The fact that they knew they could trust each other because we were creating like this type of space in the same way that PGMF does with us and with the Learning Hub. Then I would say cross-disciplinary mix, yes, but ensuring that there is no expertise that it's valued more than others. Because when it comes to AI, is just as much about asking the right question that it is about building the right tools. And that 360 perspective mattered a lot. And the third point builds up on what we were all just saying, which is there is a commitment to shared learning. We do not need everyone to have all the answers, but we want everyone to be willing to learn and share so that we can collectively gather all that information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are all excellent points. I appreciate that you sort of resurfaced that concept of building trust, which I think is really important when we talk about some of the work that you do, Evan. So you mentioned that kind of split between the AI hype and the AI doom, but I'll, reframe it. And I remember you mentioning this kind of a culture of hesitancy around AI. So you work with these researchers and policymakers that maybe getting buy-in from them might be a challenge, particularly when they have real concerns about privacy or community safety or errors along the way. So I'm curious how your team tackles that challenge. What are the major roadblocks and concerns that you often come across in those early stages? And what are some of the best practices you've used to overcome them?
Yeah, absolutely. It's It's always an evolving situation. I think for us, the first voice we're always considering here are the users. And I think engaging them and figuring out exactly the role that AI plays, essentially it's starting from a premise of making sure they realize we're there to help them do their jobs better. And we're not going to either push AI too far on them if they don't think it's a solution. And we're also not going to hold back from giving them new things. We're not trying to withhold the latest technology because we think they're not ready for it, or we think that their organization or business might not get. At the same time, we're not saying you have to use AI to use the right technology. The right technology might be a map. The right technology might be a mobile application. The right technology might be something AI based. And so just really emphasizing first, last, and center that we're there to help you do your job better, and we're helped there to give you tools to do that work. The second set of stakeholders that we engage with that sometimes have this kind of either a little bit cautious or maybe a little bit too eager are researchers. And for us, it's a matter of getting those folks to engage. Exactly, their superpower is often what we need for AI. So if you worked with a lot of kind of production grade AI systems, one of these big challenges is finding the right level of evaluation. How do we know this is accurate enough? And we found that researchers are amazing at helping us shape evals and amazing at being evaluators and part of the process. And if you can really open them up to that. So instead of saying, hey, come to launch and you'll see it and you'll check it out, it's like 3 weeks before the launch, check these evals, right? We want you to write new ones. We want you to write 100 new evals to see if the system works or not. We want you to look at the responses with us. We'll sit with an engineer shoulder to shoulder, and we'll actually talk about that. And that builds trust and confidence, and also just harnesses what researchers are often best at: asking good questions, being inquisitive, focusing on accuracy, focusing on detail. And that improves our AI system so much. And so on both sides there, whether we have users or researchers, they're so important. It's possible to bring them in. It's possible to have them be part of the fuel for this work, and then also part of what makes sure the work lands in an appropriate place, both for quality and then also for impact.
I love that idea of harnessing what researchers are best at, or what the different members of your team are best at. It kind of goes back to something Feli mentioned about not valuing one area of expertise over another. I think that's really important as you're building this sort of holistic strategy around AI adoption. So Abhilash, over to you. You work with a lot of probably AI enthusiastic thinkers and innovators, or at least folks who are a bit more tech forward. So as you're sort of harnessing that curiosity around the potential of AI, I'm curious, how do you help them ground their big ideas in responsible AI principles so that they're able to alleviate potential concerns from some of their stakeholders, whether those be funders, partners, or even just the communities that they serve?
Yeah, we actually start with centering the community that the innovator wants to serve. And I think that ends up being critical in trying to figure out how or whether a particular tool or a product might be relevant to that community. So really centering and identifying a specific problem that a community faces, I think ends up being kind of central to the journey of a product that we want to develop. So we start with actually we say that we are a problems first organization, which means that we don't actually care about the technology, whether that is AI or, as Evan said, a map or a simple app. What we care about is what are the problems that individuals or the innovators are trying to solve, and if these problems really matter to the communities that they want to work with. And so we encourage them to identify that problem and get validation from the community they want to serve as to whether that's a real problem, and to get a deeper texture to that problem. So oftentimes it might not be that someone needs an app. It might just be an additional layer, for instance, on WhatsApp that is already being used significantly by a community. So like really getting into that texture of that problem is super helpful, because then that informs the kind of tech forward innovator to figure out whether they should be building an AI wrapper with WhatsApp, or whether they should be building a standalone app of some kind. What kind of data would they be needing access to? Would this function in an environment where internet access might be slightly glitchy? And so I think really being problems focused and community focused at the very beginning ends up being super critical. And so the two kind of constituencies we are working with are the innovators themselves, who are, of course, as you mentioned, very enthusiastic and excited about these tools. So we get them to we get them to be a little more grounded in their questioning around what they want to build. And the second sort of the constituency that we are working with are the users or the communities themselves. And there we encourage a lot of our innovators to really engage individuals in a way that does not put the technology first, but puts the interests of the community first. So asking, what is the problem? And I'm here to solve the problem. And the technology is a tool to solve the problem. And I think that ensures that people feel like this is not a technology that is just being kind of imposed on them, but kind of they adopt it more naturally. So I think that ends up being our approach. And I will end by saying, like, one of some of my favorite things to do is to have a conversation with some of our innovators during an office hour and identifying that AI is not the right tool in this situation. Maybe it's a simple website that might solve the problem. And I think oftentimes it is very easy to be swept up in the hype of AI and think that we can use AI in different contexts. In large parts of the world, building simple tools can be way more powerful than building a hyped up AI product. And what AI can do is help build these products really effectively. But keeping that lens in mind, I think, is super critical.
Yeah, I think that's so important, having that sort of ability to pivot when maybe AI isn't the right solution at this time. And that doesn't rule it out for future solutions down the road, but having that sort of maturity at an organizational level to make that call is so critical. We have sort of another round of one more question for every single person on stage right now, but I would invite the audience. I see some questions are beginning to come in. Please do share those questions, because we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes for an audience-focused Q&A. So for the last question, we call this the AI journey because we very much do believe that it is a process. And like any journey, you begin with that reason or objective. You need a solid plan that kind of carries you along. And above all, you need the courage to continue in the face of obstacles or even temporary setbacks. So with that in mind, what is one piece of advice you'd give to someone who feels behind when it comes to AI, especially if they work in a sector that has been historically less tech forward? I'll start with Abhilash this time.
My response to this is that in a technological revolution that is growing exponentially, we are all not ahead of the curve. We are all behind the curve, and to kind of approach this with humility and saying, I, as a leader of a tech social enterprise, I feel behind all the time. I learn so much from our students and our innovators who are 20 years younger than me and just know a lot of these tools so much better. And like approaching these conversations from a place of humility and curiosity can be way more powerful than me pretending to know that I have all the answers. So I think that's the first thing to kind of approach it with, is to be like, we are all learners here and we are all kind of behind the curve.
Felly, how about you?
Plus one on that. But also I would say in the same line, like AI is not an incremental technology. We're talking about transformational technology. This is going to affect every aspect of our lives. This is going to affect how we relate to healthcare, the way food is produced, and everything around us. And we're just starting to see like the ramifications and where this can go. So one advice I would say is start exploring these ramifications, start imagining where this is going, identifying what are the problems that the industry that you are in has or might have as this progresses, and how AI could, or not, could help solve these problems. I think that's a good starting point to start finding places for application. But once you get there, if I can say one more thing, is just start. Prototype something. There's a lot of tools that can get you to very great things very quickly. And the best way to learn is actually by just doing. It does not need to be perfect. but just one project grounded in a real need, it can teach you way more and help you build that confidence to keep going.
That's a great point. Just start. Wonderful. Evan, I'll pass that same question off to you.
That's great. Yeah, I would echo that. Just starting is such a huge step. And then maybe just to build on it, after you start, make sure you're asking a useful and valuable question. So if you can figure it out with AI, is something really going to change in the world? Something really going to change for your workflow? You save yourself a lot of time, little time. Getting that question right and having that is a key thing. And then second, some way to know if you're improving, and be comfortable with the okay that maybe at the beginning it's going to be quite bad, but having our own sort of learning loop and our own ability to say, I tried this task last week and I couldn't figure out how to do it, but I'm going to try it again this week, and then if I'm successful in it, then that helps me build and grow. And so, yeah, building on that, just get it started. Have a way to focus on important questions, and then measure your progress, even if incrementally as you go. And you'll see very quickly, like any other journey. If you're, I do Muay Thai kickboxing, and I've been so bad for so many years. But one, I still enjoy it, and two, I know I can get better incrementally. Even if I'm never going to be great, it still gives me that satisfaction. It gives me that set of tools that I need for my life. And I would just encourage others to kind of take that framework, as opposed to, sometimes we apply way overwrought frameworks like, well, this is going to sink or sail my organization, those sorts of things. Like, really focus it on something you're curious about and you want to learn and you want to grow, and it'll come to you very quickly after that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Evan. We are on a similar journey with Muay Thai, learning more every day. So that's exciting. Wonderful. So we will move over to the audience Q&A. I encourage you, if you have a specific person you'd like to answer your question, please feel free to share that in the chat as well. But we'll start with Jay's question. What are some good classes for learning about AI, including prompt engineering for general staff? For technical staff, I'm especially interested in courses related to tools like Claude and topics such as AI modeling. Does anyone want to jump in, or should I assign it?
I'm happy to hazard an answer. So I will say, this might be slightly controversial. I don't think there's one good training for AI because it moves so quickly. And so what you're getting is always going to outdate. What I encourage people to do is go find a basic training in survey research. So you remember writing surveys? You remember you used to do this? If you've been in monitoring evaluation learning or something like that, you had to go write that. That entire toolkit of writing surveys, of thinking about how words have meaning, of thinking about, is essentially the process that we're doing with prompting. And then the process of testing survey questions and figuring out if we get responses back, that is essentially the core skill set of working with these tools in a conservative way. So I would actually say, go find a survey research course, a very simple one, and kind of take that and think about how words matter and how words lead to answers and responses. For the higher level stuff, I would put in a plug for, I believe it's Hamal Hassan and Shreya Shankar are two amazing researchers and builders, and they have a course on evals, which I think is like mandatory kind of listening, watching for product managers and engineers and data scientists. It's a little costly, but they are really good about releasing a lot of the materials and things out into the public domain. So if you poke around, you can find that. But they have this course on AI evals for, I think, for builders or product developers or something like that. And that's been awesome. And then every other kind of person on our team that I've recommended to is really just seen a jump in their ability to understand the success of these tools and steer it appropriately.
That's excellent. Does anyone have anything to add? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Evan. The next question is kind of related to the prior question from Rich. Do the panelists have go-to resources for basic AI literacy for their non-tech colleagues and communities to bridge the gap in basic knowledge before conversations about new builds, et cetera, or to help people understand how off-the-shelf tools might even be the way to start before any new build at all? That's a great question.
I can try and take this. We kind of have an internal kind of repository of interesting tools that can be used by individuals. So in a lot of all staff meetings, we will kind of go over any new tools and kind of keeping this repository alive and kind of going back every month and saying, hey, this new tool just dropped, might be worth trying it out. I think creating that kind of a library of tools can be quite helpful. And we kind of call it our internal Wirecutter. So if those of you who follow the New York Times, Wirecutter, it kind of it prescribes certain types of tools, and we try to kind of call it our internal Wirecutter tools for AI. And I think that can be quite helpful because there might be individuals who are really savvy about specific tools, whether that is for writing code or for writing text, and they and their expertise can really help validate what products we should be using. And so that's something that I encourage kind of companies to have that collaborative learning where different people trying out different tools can just put it on a Notion page and say, hey, this worked really well for me, maybe worth checking out. I think in terms of AI learning for like foundations, I am kind of, I come from a physics background, so I also like kind of go back to I think about AI as applied statistics, and I cannot recommend 3 blue, 1 brown videos enough to both my students and everyone else. 3 blue, 1 brown videos. They explain math and statistics in a very intuitive, visual way, and he has this is Grant Sanderson, and he has a wonderful series of videos on explaining neural networks and large language models that I think demystifies a lot of what is going on in these models, and I highly recommend them.
I would only add one thing to what Abhilash was just saying, and is so from the NPA, we are developing a set of resources that are very simple, starting from what data is and what else. So we have a library, and you can look for it at the News Product Alliance. But additionally to what Abhilash was saying, it usually happens that things move very fast, but someone within the team actually becomes very good at it very quickly. So we host like informal trainings amongst ourselves in which like we demo tools together, and someone like can bring a problem and this other person can like showcase how they would solve it with this particular tool about AI.
That's a wonderful idea. It's a very collective learning approach. We have a question from Grace in the chat. In a recent roundtable on AI and social investment, we discussed what innovative mechanisms exist to ensure investment in equitable and safe AI. You three are innovators. How do you secure funding, and how do you navigate those constraints?
I can maybe speak a little bit to this, and I think one of my pet peeves is how much of capital goes towards kind of commercial AI versus how much of capital goes towards public interest AI, and I think PJMF is one of the rare foundations with an exclusive focus on AI. I think a lot of other foundations are trying to figure out what to do with it. But my personal kind of take on this is to be kind of having a legal structure that is flexible. So we at Equitech Futures are a C3, and we also have a commercial arm that allows us to then tap into different types of funding opportunities and being flexible in the long run. And I think that's going to be the environment where philanthropic capital might help in launching certain types of prototypes, but to actually scale solutions, we might need either patient commercial capital of some kind, and being able to be talking to your board and talking to your partners and saying, hey, we want this flexible structure in order for us to be able to kind of grow in the right way. I think can be quite helpful. That said, there's of course a lot of tension around these flexible structures given the controversy at OpenAI. So being again very transparent right from get-go, saying this is our mission, and the reason why we want to be flexible with our structure is so that it allows us to tap into different types of capital. I think that's a lesson that we learned early on. So.
In our case, we are a nonprofit organization, but one of the ways in which we work and one of the ways in which we've diversified our revenue sources is that we've identified problems that we can look for grant funding to solve, for instance, the infrastructure layer, but we offer services on top of that, specialized services on top of that So in that way, you can balance out the investment required that can benefit and fulfill your mission with a service that continues to fulfill your mission, but also helps support your operation as you sustain all of this infrastructure.
Those are all great points. And there's actually a rich discussion going on in the chat with folks sharing some additional resources, and I'll invite the speakers to share any of the resources that they mentioned in the public chat as well. We have one last question, and probably that's all we have the time for today, but how should an organization weigh the cost, such as resources and time, of automating a process with AI against continuing to run it manually without AI? Are there any best practices or frameworks for this?
I'm happy to start. I think the first is, it's simple, but we don't always do it in our sector, is simply measuring the unit cost of something. So the unit cost of producing an expense report or any of these sorts of things, and really getting to quantifying that is a really important step. And then what I'll say is how you apply resources against it. And this kind of builds on the last question as well, which is, I encourage folks to use your most flexible money, whether that be from a philanthropy who's giving you generous, flexible money, or you have indirect money or something like that. Use that for innovation and infrastructure. Because in innovation, you want to be able to pick things up and say that doesn't work, and then back right back out. And you're going to want all this flexibility. And no very reasonable philanthropy in the world, unless they're saying this is flexible, is going to want to give you that. If they said, I thought you were going to build this thing, are you not going to build this thing? That creates a real challenge there. Then use your most focused money for ideas you really believe in, and then you have high confidence that will scale. Now, there's still a chance that that doesn't work, and that happens a lot. But that sort of thing, just measuring the unit cost of doing one of that thing, whether it's producing one report, et cetera, and then thinking about how can we use our flexible money to test this out and build the underlying infrastructure to do that repeatedly, and then how can we use less flexible money to scale it up and to take it to a wider audience when we have confidence, to me has been the right mix when we've gotten there.
Those are all great points. Anybody else before we break?
Yeah, I think like one final thing to kind of end this in is like a technology is only as good as people adopting it. And so really, particularly in teams which are intergenerational, being patient with individuals as they figure out how to adopt these technologies, because technology adoption just has a very different rate depending on how familiar people might be, and being patient with that process, I think, is super important, and not having too much of a top heavy, we are going to mandate the use of this particular tool, or we're going to mandate or we're going to completely prohibit using a particular kind of tool. I think being more flexible, like, really allows for adoption to happen with trust and in collaboration, as opposed to technology adoption creating frictions, which it can in many institutions. So I would just sort of end with that people at the end will decide whether technology is successful or not, and keeping them front and center matters the most.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That was a great discussion. Thanks to the audience for joining us for our time today. Thank you in particular to our speakers, Feli, Evan, and Avilash. You've left us with very practical and actionable insights about how to navigate those early stages of the AI journey from an organizational perspective. We'll now switch over to the Zoom breakout sessions, which are, of course, optional. My colleague will share the link in the chat. I think she just did. So please do join us if you have an extra 15 to 20 minutes to spare. If not, we do hope to see you the next time for episode 2, which will focus on the exploration phase of our AI journey. So thank you again to everyone, and I look forward to seeing some of you on Zoom momentarily. Take care.